Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Daphne Rose stood at the edge of her opulent Los Angeles apartment, gazing out at the sparkling metropolis that had previously seemed like a dream come true. When she initially arrived in the City of Angels, she was greeted warmly by Steffi Forrester, who had sent her on a mission that began as sabotage but gradually evolved into something considerably more complex. She had come to interrupt Carter Walton's relationship with Hope Logan, luring him back into the Forrester fold with her charm, perfumery talent, and obvious beauty. But sometime along the process, the lines become blurry. Daphne honestly and profoundly fell for Carter, and what began as a calculated game became her heart's truth. Carter Walton, Forrester Creations' gorgeous, ambitious COO, had always been a constant force in a world of tremendous highs and heartbreaking lows. Tall, with a warm smile that could light up any room and a deep sense of loyalty, he had Daphne's attention from the moment they met. Their connection was electrifying, with intellectual debates over sense and business tactics, late-night discussions about family and the future, and sensual encounters that left them both breathless. Daphne, with her French elegance, sharp wit, and ability to create smells that provoked strong emotions, viewed Carter as a partner who shared her ambition and yearning for something authentic. Carter eventually selected her after months of tension, misunderstandings, and secret glances. Their wedding was both modest and spectacular, a celebration of two individuals who had navigated Forrester's tumultuous world and found each other. Daphne remembered Carter's expression as he slid the ring on her finger, his voice firm as he promised to build a life together. "I want everything with you, Daphne," he'd whispered. "A home, a family, children who will know how much love surrounds them." These words made her happy. She had envisioned tiny ones racing through their house, inheriting Carter's warmth and creativity. The scent of baby powder and fresh linen, blended with her unique scents, was almost like smelling the future. However, dreams in Los Angeles, particularly on the bold and the beautiful, were rarely without heartbreak. Not long after their honeymoon glow faded, Daphne noticed minor changes in her body. She initially ignored them as stress from adjusting to married life amidst Forrester's never-ending power battles. She and Carter had agreed almost immediately to begin trying for a baby. Why wait? Life was short in their high-stakes universe, where alliances changed like Santa Ana winds. Carter was excited, making room in their loft for a nursery, and joked about teaching their child the art of negotiating and the science of fragrance. Daphne had laughed, her heart full of love. One tranquil evening, as they sat on the couch with a glass of wine, Daphne chose sparkling water without thinking about it. She felt a wave of nausea. Carter saw her pallor and offered a pregnancy test, his eyes bright with optimism. "Could it be?" he asked, bringing her closer. Daphne's hands trembled while she took the test. They waited in the restroom for what seemed like an eternity. When the results arrived, they were not what either had expected. Negative. But something seemed odd. Daphne persisted on seeing a doctor, her perfumer's intuition telling her that her body was transmitting signals that her heart was unprepared to receive. The appointment altered everything. In the clean office overlooking the Hollywood Hills, the doctor delivered news that rocked Daphne's life. After performing a battery of tests, including blood testing and ultrasounds, the physician sat them down with a serious expression. Daphne wasn't pregnant. Worse, she might not be able to carry a kid to term. A unique medical condition, linked to her previous health difficulties that she had never fully acknowledged, made pregnancy highly risky, potentially fatal for her. The words hung heavily in the air: problems, infertility treatments with low success rates, the option of surrogacy or adoption as options, but no certainty of the biological family Carter had always desired. Carter had offered comfort, his strong hand clutching hers as tears welled up in his eyes. "We'll figure this out together," he stated, his voice breaking but determined. "I love you, Daphne. A baby doesn't define us." But Daphne knew him too well. Carter grew up in an environment where family was important. He fought for his place at Forrester and built his career on commitment and legacy. The concept of having children, his own flesh and blood, was a quiet fantasy he had only expressed with her. She could detect a spark of disappointment in his eyes, even if he tried to conceal it. He would never put too much pressure on her or make her feel inadequate. But Daphne loved him enough not to imprison him in a life that may leave him unsatisfied. That night, alone in their bedroom with Carter sleeping fitfully beside her, Daphne made her decision. She couldn't stay in LA and watch their marriage deteriorate under the weight of what she couldn't give him. She couldn't be the reason Carter's aspirations of fatherhood faded away. Paris beckoned to her, the city of her origins, where her perfumery skills had first grown, where she could bury herself in inventing new perfumes without being constantly reminded of Forrester's drama. She imagined herself wandering down the Seine, the air filled with the perfume of fresh croissants and blooming flowers, far from the pom-poms and paparazzi flashes of Los Angeles. The next morning, Daphne packed a single suitcase, leaving the majority of her belongings behind as a subtle vow that this wouldn't last forever, or maybe it did. She penned a note for Carter, her exquisite calligraphy quivering slightly on the cream-colored paper. "My dearest Carter, you have given me more love than I ever thought possible. But I can't be the woman who holds you back from the family you deserve. The doctor's news, it changes everything. I need time to heal, to find a way forward that doesn't break your heart. Please don't follow me right away. Build the life you dream of. I will always love you." She left the note on the kitchen counter, next to the pregnancy test stick that had sparked their brief hope. Daphne drove to the airport, tears running down her cheeks, replaying their shared memories in her memory. Their first kiss occurred in the Forrester lab, surrounded by jars of essential oils. Carter protected her against Hope's suspicions. Steffi and the Forrester clan watch approvingly as they exchange wedding vows under a canopy of white roses. She recalls giggling over late-night food and debating baby names, something French like Eloise or classic like Alexander. These dreams seemed like brittle glass, crushed by medical reality. When Daphne arrived in Paris, she immediately began working at a small boutique fragrance, creating custom smells for clients who valued her talent. The city welcomed her as an old friend, its cobblestone streets providing peace. But every nightfall, as the Eiffel Tower gleamed in the distance, her thoughts returned to Carter. She imagined him in Los Angeles, devoting himself to work at Forrester and possibly confiding in Ridge or Eric about the sudden emptiness in his marriage. Will he move on? Find someone who could give him the children he desired? The thought twisted like a dagger, but she convinced herself it was the noble decision. Weeks became months. Daphne initially avoided calls from LA, allowing voicemails from Steffi and others to pile up. She worked on healing and sought second views from physicians in Europe. Some treatments provided little hope, but the hazards remained significant. One doctor proposed experimental therapies, but Daphne hesitated. What if she tried and failed, then returned to Carter broken and defeated? No, she had to be strong on her own terms. Carter was upset upon returning to Los Angeles. He discovered the note and stared at it for hours, his world collapsing. He felt something was amiss when Daphne seemed aloof after the appointment, but he never expected her to depart without a struggle. "She's protecting me," he reminded himself while pacing the empty loft. Friends rallied around him, with Hope offering awkward compassion and Steffi encouraging him to pursue her. Carter originally respected Daphne's desires. He buried himself in contracts and designs, developing a new range inspired by her scents, with each bottle serving as a silent tribute. However, love like theirs did not evaporate lightly. Carter began investigating her problem and speaking with fertility professionals privately. He learned about breakthroughs in reproductive medicine, surrogacy alternatives, and even adoption processes that could help them create the family they desired. "She doesn't have to do this alone," he mumbled between sleepless nights. The more he thought about it, the more he knew Daphne's leaving was not a rejection, but the ultimate act of love. She couldn't stomach seeing him give up on his dreams, so she withdrew herself from the equation. In Paris, Daphne's willpower began to fray. She missed the way Carter's laughter filled her room, the soft way he caressed her collarbone after making love, and the shared silences when words were unnecessary. She burst into tears one rainy afternoon while creating a new fragrance that reminded her of their first date, with notes of sandalwood and lemon. Her phone rang with a message from an unknown number, but the words were obviously Carter's. "I know why you left. But our story isn't over. Let me fight for us." She didn't respond right away, but the seed of hope was planted. As the seasons changed, Daphne began to open out to a valued confidant in Paris, a fellow perfumer who had been through her own health struggles. "Love isn't about perfection," the woman explained over her café au lait. "It's about choosing each other every day, even when the path is uncertain." These words repeated in Daphne's mind as she took long walks through the Luxembourg gardens. She began to imagine an alternative future, not the picture-perfect family with biological children, but one based on resilience, possibly with adopted children or medical miracles they pursued together. News from LA spread through social groups. Forrester was thriving under new leadership, with Sheila Carter wreaking havoc in the background, but Carter remained the moral core. Daphne discovered that he had declined approaches from others while being true to their vows. That loyalty rekindled her courage. She scheduled a flight back, not to stay permanently, but to converse in person. The reunion at the airport was teary and emotional. Carter waited with flowers, her favorite jasmine blend, and when Daphne emerged from the plane, thinner but with a determined spark in her eyes, he drew her into his arms. "You left because you loved me too much to hurt me," he added, his voice full of emotion. "But staying away hurts worse. We can face this together, doctors, options, whatever it takes. Or we build a family another way. Just don't leave me again." Daphne nodded, hiding her face in his chest. "I was afraid I'd become a burden, that one day you'd resent me for not being able to give you what you wanted most." Carter cupped her cheek and wiped away tears. "You are what I want most. The rest, we'll figure it out. Adoption, surrogacy, or just us two traveling the world creating sense and memories. A child would be a bonus, not a requirement." They returned to the loft, where Carter had kept her things intact, a shrine to their stopped life. They talked for days about their worries, hopes, and practical approaches. Daphne saw a new specialist in Los Angeles, who had been recommended by Carter's study. The prognosis was not promising, but there were steps forward: diligent monitoring, prospective treatments, and an openness to non-traditional family development. Forrester welcomed her back with wide arms, with Steffi apologizing for previous manipulations and complimenting her ability once more. As they restored, minor pleasures reappeared. Date nights reliving their early infatuation, and joint perfume ventures that combined Daphne's creativity with Carter's financial savvy. Daphne experienced a shift one evening while trying a new scent called Enduring Bloom, a blend of rose, resilience, and new beginnings. This is an emotional pregnancy, not a physical one. She recognized that she could be enough, regardless of the condition. Their narrative spread across the Forrester circle. Hope observed with quiet reverence, possibly recognizing parallels in her own turbulent love life. Ridge gave fatherly wisdom, reminding them that heritage was more than just blood. Carter and Daphne created a safe haven amidst Sheila's latest plans and Taylor's personal issues. Months later, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city that had put them through so much, Daphne looked to Carter. "I left because I thought I couldn't be the wife who gave you everything. But maybe everything looks different than we imagined." Carter grinned and drew her close. "You already give me everything that matters. And if a baby comes, biologically or otherwise, it will be the cherry on top of a life I never want to live without you." Daphne's journey from leaving LA to returning was not linear. There were setbacks, disappointing appointments, periods of doubt about whether she had made the correct decision to go. Carter dealt with his own pain, secretly mourning the easy path to parenthood while every day recommitting to his marriage. They went to counseling and learned how to communicate without burdening each other. Daphne's perfumery grew, and her new line, Resilient Hearts, became a hit, with each bottle expressing a narrative of love triumphing over adversity. In quiet moments, they talked about adoption agencies, overseas programs, and even fostering. Carter surprised her with brochures for family-friendly resorts, where they might imagine life after infertility troubles. Daphne, in turn, devised a unique smell for their potential kid, combining protection, adventure, and unconditional love. The bold and the beautiful world continued its frenzy of business takeovers, romantic entanglements, and family feuds, but Carter and Daphne's attention shifted to mending. She no longer viewed "can't be pregnant" as a defining failing. Instead, it became a chapter that bolstered their friendship. Friends noted the difference. Daphne's smile returned, brighter and more genuine, and Carter's protectiveness transformed into cooperation. On a crisp fall day, they visited an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, holding hands as they met children in need of homes. Daphne was reminded of her own childhood fascination with blending colors and smells when she saw a little girl with inquiring eyes and a love of drawing. "She could be ours," Carter murmured. Daphne shed tears of hope, not grief. Their love story demonstrated that sometimes leaving was the most courageous step toward returning stronger. Daphne had left LA not out of weakness, but out of deep love, unable to imagine a future in which she constrained Carter's dreams. However, she learned that meaningful partnership required overcoming limitations together and redefining family on their own terms. As the seasons changed once more, holidays approached, and Forrester prepared for another fashion show, Daphne and Carter stood together. The pregnancy test that had earlier shattered their expectations now represented a watershed moment, forcing them to confront what was most important. She couldn't offer him a biological pregnancy easily, but she could provide him with unshakable commitment, shared laughter, and a meaningful existence. In the end, Daphne's departure and return created a tapestry of endurance. Los Angeles, with its glitz and gossip, had put their love to the test, much like a delicate perfume exposed to high temperatures. But, like the best perfumes, it grew more complex and resilient in the face of adversity. Carter and Daphne's future loomed ahead, unclear in details but assured in devotion. Whether through medical miracles, adoption, or a child-free adventure filled with travel and creation, they would confront it together. Daphne no longer avoided the can't. Instead, she embraced the can, the ability to love fiercely, create a heartfelt legacy, and turn suffering into purpose. And in Carter's embrace, under the endless California sun, she realized that leaving was the road back to where she truly belonged, with him, forever. Daphne had always held herself with a serene assurance that gave the impression that she was in complete control. But beneath that serene appearance, she was collapsing. Los Angeles had previously seemed like a town full of possibilities, especially when Carter entered her life. He was everything she didn't realize she needed: dependable, supportive, and deeply committed. For a while, it appeared that their future was perfectly aligned. They talked about creating a life together, about family, and about long-lasting love. However, everything changed when Daphne was forced to confront a terrible truth she had been avoiding for far too long. After numerous doctor trips and solitary prayers, she discovered that she may never be able to have children. The words rang in her thoughts, shattering something deep within her. She understood how important family was to Carter. She had seen how his eyes softened around children and how he aspired to be a father someday. She thought she would never be able to fulfill his ambition. Daphne initially tried to brush her anxieties aside. She convinced herself that love was enough and that they could find other means to start a family. But the doubt persisted, eating away at her tranquility. Every chat about the future served as a reminder of what she imagined she was denying him. The guilt was crushing. She began to pull away, establishing distance without expressing why. Carter, unsurprisingly, took note. He tried to reach her and explain what was going on, but Daphne couldn't bring herself to speak it aloud. Admitting the truth felt like ending everything they had. Instead, she made a decision that would alter both of their lives indefinitely. Daphne left Los Angeles without telling Carter the real story. She convinced herself it was the proper thing to do, that by leaving his life, she was giving him the opportunity to meet someone who could give him all he desired. She believed he earned the sacrifice, even if it meant destroying her own heart. Daphne walked away from the city and from Carter, carrying the weight of her decision with her. She convinced herself he'd be better off, that one day he'd realize. But deep down, she couldn't escape the notion that she had just walked away from the greatest love she had ever experienced. And as Carter begins to understand the true reason for Daphne's hasty departure, the issue remains. Would he let her go, or will he fight for the love she worked so hard to protect?